Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the August Doman Learning question and answer session. Here at Doman Learning, every month we do a Q&A where we take questions from parents all around the world about parenting, the Doman Method, early childhood education, teaching babies how to do amazing things like read and do math long before they are school age. So welcome to everyone. And if you're new to Doman Learning, welcome. So I'm going to jump into questions. I'm going to begin with pre-submitted questions that are sent to parents in our Doman Learning Parents Facebook group. These are parents who have signed up for one of the Doman Learning early education courses. So I will start with those questions first, and then I'll open up to questions from the public. Generally, we go about 30 minutes for these Q&As. Before I jump into the questions that were pre-submitted, I do want to say, just want to remind everyone that we have the Doman Baby course. If you go to domanlearning.com, you can find our brand new course. The Doman Baby course is our newest course to teach parents about what to do during the first 6 months of life with their newborn babies. If you are a parent who is expecting a child or expecting to expect, we highly recommend this course. We teach in it what are the best activities to do with an infant for their mobility development, their visual development, their understanding and hearing, their tactility. What are the kinds of stimulation you can do with a newborn baby to help that child see and hear as well as possible? That's very important because when babies are born, they are effectively functionally blind and deaf. And how to help that child learn to move and speak as quickly as possible in a way that will help them in their development, right? And kids who start ahead stay ahead, right? An important thing that was said by Dr. Neil Harvey, a good friend of my grandfather, Glenn Doman. He wrote a book even called Kids Who Start Ahead Stay Ahead, which was all about kids who grew up on the Doman method. And we have learned that to be the case. And that's why we are so focused on early infant stimulation. So check out the Doman Baby course at domanlearning.com. All right, let me check into our early questions. My first question comes from Koss. And Koss is asking, for a child who's 2 years old, how much should they walk per day? Is there any limitation? For example, our child can walk as much as 5 kilometers during the day. Is that okay, or should we have her walk less? On the other hand, we can motivate her to walk even more. Is it safe? So, first of all, Koss, children usually are pretty good at knowing their own physical limitations. When kids will usually show that they are tired and they don't want to do a physical activity. And that's why we always emphasize to parents to stop before your child wants to stop, right? If your child is showing that they are tired during walking or tired when you're doing a reading session, math session, whatever it is, you want to stop before they want to stop. So that way, next time when you do the next session, they're excited and ready to do it. So if your daughter wants to walk throughout the day, honestly, that means you're probably not doing too much because she wants to do it. She's initiating it. If, on the other hand, if you said to me, Spencer, we're having her walk and she's crying and upset, I would say, hold on now, that's a different case. But based on what you're saying, it seems like she wants to walk, which is very normal for a 2-year-old, and that's very healthy. I have to say that, I see kids constantly, 4, 5, 6 years old, strapped into strollers, and parents are pushing them around. And I am horrified by that because little kids love to walk. They love to move. And but the problem is, for some children, they just never get that opportunity. They're constantly in strollers, sitting, and they don't get that unlimited physical opportunity that kids should be getting. So no, Koss, I don't think you're going too far. What I often will say to parents is, listen, in terms of, since your daughter wants to walk throughout the day, I would probably focus on, okay, can you do something like 2 sessions of 15 minutes of walking with her? And then when assuming she already can do 2 sessions a day of 15 minutes of walking, maybe then you try to build it up to 1 session of 30 minutes. Okay. And over time, see if you can get to 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers of walking in that 30 minutes, right? So as a child, their stamina improves, they usually can get faster in their walking. And generally, if you get up to 1.6 kilometers in 30 minutes, a child will be running or starting to run at that point. And for a 2-year-old, average child starts running at around 3 years of age. But the more walking opportunity you give a child, the sooner they will begin to run. So I think you're doing great, Kos. I don't think you necessarily have to change anything. But if you wanted to start building up your child's stamina of walking and see if you can ultimately reach that goal of 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers in 30 minutes, I think that would be great. All right, for everyone who's joining late, I'm starting with pre-submitted questions from parents in our Doman Learning Parents Facebook group. But if we still have time at the end, I'll take questions from the public. So go ahead, start typing your questions. Whether you're following me right now on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, type your questions in, and I'll answer them in order. Beatrice is asking a question, which is discussed in the Doman Baby course. And Beatrice says, I've never managed with the poems and rhymes. I gave up. I'm starting to do it again to see, but he won't respond even when I give him enough time. All right, good question, Beatrice. Now, this question doesn't quite say how old the child is. So Beatrice, probably in this case, I would try songs with your child, okay? So you mentioned poems and rhymes, which is one part of the language program. Another part are songs, right? Where you're singing like, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear John, happy birthday to, and you leave a word for a child to fill in. Very often with music, children love music, and they're very often motivated to sing. And so give that a try, Beatrice. Let me know how that goes. And remember that frequency can make a difference. So for example, I usually recommend to sing a song 3 times a day for 3 days to a child. And then after 3 days, drop that word for the child to say. But if you, maybe it's a good idea, Beatrice, to try to increase that a little bit with your child. Maybe you do it 5 times a day with him for 5 days and then start to leave a word. Sometimes more frequency can be helpful. I hope that helps. All right, Beatrice asks another question here. She's asking about phase 4 visual development. This is a question from the book, How Smart Is Your Baby? And she's saying, how do you know when to stop visual intelligence cards or the reading cards? And how many times? The book mentions that once you do the series explained, the baby is ready for the next suite. How to teach your baby to read, for example. I don't know if it's still too early. At this stage, I have the impression my baby is not very interested in the reading cards, only the bit cards. He just wants to eat the paper. Okay, so listen, the most important thing you said in that question is you said he likes the bit cards, the image cards, but doesn't seem to be very interested in the reading cards. And I'm not sure if you know this, Beatrice, but in our Reading Before School course and materials at Doman Learning, we have picture cards and word cards together. And we've deliberately done that, not on the same card, by the way. We have a picture of an elephant on one card and then the word elephant, and then a picture of a lion and then a card with the word lion. And this is because we found that children have increased interest and enthusiasm when we have picture cards along with those word cards. So I think if you do picture cards and word cards, you'll probably find that your kid is really engaged. And we've done that on purpose because what we were finding when we were just doing reading cards, sure, the majority of children were happy with just the reading cards, but there were some kids that were like, I'd rather be looking at pictures right now, right, than doing reading cards. And so when we added the pictures to the reading program, we found they were much more engaged. So that's what I would recommend. Now, to answer your other question, is your child ready for the reading program? The answer is yes, because if he's interested in images, that means he can see detail. That means he has the visual ability necessary to begin to learn how to read. So he's got everything there. I think it's just about using the Doman Learning picture and word materials will really help get him interested in the reading part of the program. Good question, Beatrice. All right. I've got one more question here from Beatrice, and then I will, I'm starting with these pre-submitted questions from parents in the Doman Learning Parents Facebook group. Those are parents who have signed up for the Doman Learning courses. But after this last question from Beatrice, I will go to questions from the audience. So go ahead and start typing your questions in. I do see my next question after Beatrice will be for Karina, who asked a question on Instagram, and then I will go to Amanda. Okay, so Beatrice's last question, which is an interesting one. She said, my understanding is there hasn't been a revived version of the book, How Smart is Your Baby? There are some elements that I would love to have an update on, such as the SIDS section. The book, of course, mentioned that it's a parent's choice. I asked my pediatrician, and he really told me not to let him sleep in the tummy position. In my experience, it's almost impossible to do more than the minimum hours required for phase 2 mobility in the book. An update would be great. Okay, so Beatrice, what is being said in the book, How Smart is Your Baby, is essentially calling into question some of the science that has been used to back up the back to sleep concept, right? Which is that all children should always sleep, all babies should always sleep on their backs. Here are basically the questions, and these are the questions that are outlined in the research in the book, but have continued to kind of cause additional questions about that recommendation. So, the Back to Sleep campaign started in the 1940s, okay? And it was started in, I think, 1994, and parents were told you should put your babies always to sleep on their backs. And since then, the vast majority of American children and European children, I'm guessing children all around the world, have been put to sleep on their backs. And during the 1990s, there was a reduction in sudden infant death syndrome, which by short is called SIDS. Now, here are some of the issues. During that same time, during the 1990s, there was a decline in the number of SIDS deaths, but there were many other factors that were going on in the 1990s besides the change in sleep position. For example, the number of pregnant mothers who smoked and the number of mothers and fathers who smoked in the presence of their infants greatly decreased during the 1990s because a really parental understanding of the harms of secondhand smoke greatly increased during that time. So that's one factor that changed in the 1990s. Number two, mothers during pregnancy took many more prenatal vitamins during the 1990s to supplement, very important vitamins and minerals that they needed during pregnancy. Number three, chemicals in infant bedding greatly changed during the 90s, right? They started to realize, there are chemicals in the mattresses of babies that are harmful to babies. Maybe we should take that out. So that changed. Mothers drinking alcohol during pregnancy in the 90s greatly decreased, right? So these are all factors that really should be researched and studied about the connection between those things and sudden infant death syndrome. But unfortunately, the kind of consensus was, no, those things, it's not that, it's sleep position. And, as someone who works with children who have had very severe brain injuries because of maternal, because of, let's say, fetal alcohol syndrome. I've seen many children brain injured with fetal alcohol syndrome, or, children who have been affected by, chemicals, in products. Those things are really need to be further researched. And so that's what in the book, How Smart is Your Baby, that's what's being called into question. Like, is what we've all been told solid science, actually solid science? The other thing to consider, I think, two very other kind of concerns, or let me list three other concerns actually about the constant advice that parents are given to always put their babies on their backs. Well, the first thing is that, over time, after the Back to Sleep campaign started in the 1990s, of course, most parents not only put their children on their backs to sleep, but put them on their backs all the time during the day because the parents were so scared about the health of their children. They just kept them on their backs all the time, right? And children started to develop flat heads. And all of a sudden, a new disease was discovered called occipital plagiocephaly, right? Occipital plagiocephaly sounds very scary. It basically means flat head, okay? So babies started to develop a flat head because their skulls are not strong, right? And so if a baby is lying on their back all the time, it creates this flat head. I guess my question is, if nature meant for us to be on our backs all the time, why would we develop flat heads if we put a baby always on its back, right? You would have thought that by now, through the process of human evolution, we would have developed hard skulls that wouldn't allow for that. And by the way, children who have occipital plagiocephaly, it's been shown that they are more likely to have all kinds of developmental and cognitive issues. So, and by the way, when they discovered occipital plagiocephaly, parents were just told to start putting helmets on their children, right? Instead of saying, maybe the children need to have some time on their tummies, they started developing helmets. Okay, so that was the first thing. And so even now, most parents are told, give your baby tummy time, but they're not really told how much or how important it is. So the first thing is that when parents started putting their children all the time on their backs, it had obvious negative consequences for children who are spending all the time on their backs. Now, the other thing is, 80% of humans prefer to sleep on their bellies or on their sides. So that raises another interesting question. If humans seem to prefer sleeping on their bellies and sides, and sleeping on your back is so dangerous, that's a little bit of a strange consequence that, we should all be sleeping on our backs. So there are all kinds of questions that have come up because of all of this. But it seems like, the scientific consensus just assumed this is all a sleep position issue. So, I think, Beatrice, in the end, the reason why we say to parents, you should do what's, best for your child is because parental intuition is often right in our experience. And I think parents really have to look into this for themselves. The most important thing, you do mention, Beatrice, about you want to give your child more tummy time, and you're kind of asking, would that include sleep time? It would not. It would not. No, when we talk about tummy time, we're talking about wakeful hours where the child can actually actively move. So now, there's another point here, Beatrice, where you're saying you're trying to reach the amount of tummy time recommended in the book, How Smart is Your Baby? You're having a hard time. You're not the only one, okay? And to be honest with you, this is something that we've discussed a lot in the Doman family about how we have to revise the amount of time recommended in the books for floor time, because other parents so many parents have told us it's hard to reach that amount of time. The most important thing is, Beatrice, it sounds to me you're doing a great job. Just keep giving your child plenty of tummy time during the day, plenty of crawling opportunities. And I think you're doing everything you can do. And my other piece of advice, if you haven't signed up for the Doman Baby course, I recommend that. And I recommend the Reading Before School course for the reading materials if you don't have those already. All right, great questions. All right, we've got a lot of questions on Instagram. So Karina says, my baby is now 20 months old and she started to run once because she was able to walk. I think because her brother, who's 3 years old, loves running and she wants to keep up. Absolutely, Karina. Yeah, so, if your 3-year-old loves running and you've got a 20-month-old, let them do it together, right? Walking and running are so important, not just for mobility development and balance and coordination, very important for speech development. Recently I was sitting with my mom, Rosalind, who's one of the world's leading experts in mobility development in children. And another mother came to my mom and said, my 2-year-old speech is not as developed as it should be. My child's development is falling behind. He's not talking as much as other kids. What should I do? And I think the mom was expecting my mom to give her 50 activities. And my mom said, you know what? Have him walk 20 minutes a day. And the mom was like surprised, like, that's it? And my mom was like, if you do that, his speech will get better. And even I was like, hey, mom, maybe we should give a few more activities. And my mom was like, no, let's start with this and then we can add things later. The mom came back 2 weeks later and said, wow, his speech has exploded with 20 minutes of walking in a day. So walking is so, and why does walking help speech? Well, first of all, walking is controlled by the cortex, the highest level of the brain. We also use the cortex for comprehension and speech, right? There's a reason why children start running between 2 and 3 years of age, and their speech also explodes between 2 and 3 years of age, right? And also running develops our respiratory system. To speak in sentences, you need really good breathing control, right? Right now, as I'm talking in sentences, I'm controlling and regulating my own breathing. So when a child walks and runs, their speech development also increases faster. All right, I have a question here from Amanda. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. What are some things I can implement today to grow my 11-month-old's vocabulary? Hey, well, we just talked about the importance of mobility development, right? So for an 11-month-old, it depends if this child has started walking or not. If the child is, let's say, creeping on the hands and knees, I would say creep on the hands and knees as much as possible. If a child is walking, I would say allow your child for, if possible, unlimited opportunities to walk. I would also recommend the Doman reading program. The reading program is really helpful for increasing speech development because, for most children, they only hear language in the auditory form, right, by people speaking to them. But reading is language in the written form, which is how we view language through the visual pathway. So when we show a child a big red word, imagine a big red word that says lion. We show the word and we tell the child lion. Well, now the child is hearing the word lion and they're seeing the word lion. So we're using 2 sensory pathways, vision and hearing, instead of just 1 sensory pathway, hearing. And that's basically double the stimulation for a child. So we often see with those children, when we do a reading program, increased comprehension and increased speech development. So Amanda, I'd say focus both on mobility development and reading development, and check out domanlearning.com to learn more about our reading program. All right, I've got a question here from Shima. Shima says, hi, I have a 4-year-old who's nonverbal. Might the case be autism? Where should I start from? Well, Shima, a couple of things. So first of all, I wrote a book with my father called The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. It's available on Amazon. It's all about children who have developmental delays. How can you speed up their development? I really recommend you get that book because it's a very practical book. It says, this is what you can do right now for cognitive development. This is what you can do for speech development. This is what you can do for mobility development. Everything we do at Doman Learning was inspired by the work that we do with children with developmental delays, right? My grandfather, Glenn Doman, who was a physical therapist, realized that there are specific activities he could do to help speed up the development of children with developmental delays. When he realized he could do that, he realized, well, why can't I do these same things with all children and help them speed up in their development? That's how we got started here. So I recommend Shima get the book, The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. Check out our organization, domaninternational.org. If you go to domaninternational.org, there is a contact form. Fill out that contact form. My colleague, Colleen Hudson, will reach out to you and jump on a quick call with you to talk more about the Doman Method for children with developmental delays. I highly recommend it. It's like a 20-minute call. It's free, and she can kind of talk you through the first steps. Highly recommend that, Shima. All right. I hope that is helpful. I still have 5 minutes. If anyone else has any questions, go ahead. Feel free to throw them into the chat box, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. I will see your questions. I see we've got some people on Instagram, and we've got a couple people on Facebook as well. Yeah, Shima, out of interest, where do you live? What part of the world? At Doman International, we actually have staff and travel to 10 different locations. So just to give you an idea, we have staff in Philadelphia, which is our headquarters here in the United States, but we see families in our main European headquarters are in Italy, and we'll be seeing families in Italy. Families come from all around Europe to see us there. We'll be there in October. And then we have locations in Florida, California, Serbia, Croatia, like all over the world, India, Dubai. We're going to Dubai this year. So, Shima says London. Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, yeah. So Shima, go to domaninternational.org, fill out the contact form. My colleague Colleen will help you more. Okay, Amanda is saying, thank you. What are the main differences between the Doman method and Montessori? So I think that, let me just talk about some of the similarities. I think the similarities between the Doman method and Montessori is, first of all, a strong belief that the first years of life are essential for creating a love of learning. And also that the first years of life are incredibly important for later success in life. Okay. So I think, and that's why my grandfather, Glenn Doman, when he started the method, had a great respect for Maria Montessori. Even though the programs were very different, he was just appreciative that there were other people who believed that young children were capable of great things, and that it was important to teach young children. Because keep in mind, when the Doman method was started in the 1950s, little children were almost treated as like dehydrated adults. It was kind of like childhood was almost viewed as like a disease. You had to survive through childhood to become an adult. And I think my grandfather, Glenn Doman, fought against that and said, no, children are born brilliant, and we need to do everything we can to stimulate them. And so I think in that sense, philosophically, we have some similarities with Montessori. I think that the big difference is that with the Doman method, we believe that we can teach children essential skills like reading and math long before their school age, long before they're 6 years of age. And here's the most important thing, that it can be fun. And we can do it in a highly effective way. And so, with the Doman method, we're really focused on, how can we take reading and math and get children to be competent in these skills, but also so that they're good at it and they love it. And I think that so many, not just Montessori, I think so many educational models that exist, the parents are often told like, oh, these are kind of like play-based models. Children get to choose what they do. And that's all good. But my problem with that is that often when parents are told, oh, this is like a play-based educational model, well, children can only play with what they are, exposed to, right? What's in their environment. And so children love to learn, right? Children are obsessed with learning. If you spend any time with a 3-year-old, they'll ask you 1,000 questions about things. Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why? And in fact, unfortunately, what ends up happening is a lot of children realize that adults don't like to answer those questions. And so over time, they kind of stop asking them. But children love to learn. And so if we can teach reading and math and encyclopedic knowledge in an effective and fun way for children, which we do with the Doman method, we don't just get great results with children. We're able to raise children who love learning and who are confident, moving into the future. So I would say that's the big difference. And I would say that's the big difference between the Doman method and any other educational method out there. There's no other educational method that I know of. Well, there are a few that are kind of, I would say, like copycats from the Doman method, but there aren't many methods out there that are really focused on teaching important academic skills at a young age in a fun way. And I think that the reason why is that a lot of people in education, and this is both sad and frightening, consider essential skills like reading and math and general knowledge to be academic subjects rather than, neurological abilities, right? The ability to read, for example, the idea that we have to wait until 6 years of age to teach reading, from a neurological standpoint, is just not backed up by the science. The area of the brain that we use to read, which is called the visual word form area, it's the area of the brain that recognizes words. It allows us to read off out of a book or off a screen. That area of the brain is already organized at birth. And so basically, from a brain standpoint, we're ready to start learning to read at birth. But unfortunately, so many educators think these things are not fun. They may not admit that, but they think, reading skills, math, boring, right? Probably because they had a bad educational experience when they were children. So they don't even think to teach those things in a fun way to a tiny child, right? It's not even a part of their consideration. And so that's why when they see the Doman method, some educators even go, you're drilling the kids. No, the kids love it. They ask for it when it's done in the correct way. Good question. All right, I think we've got time for one last question. And that question is from Catherine, who's saying, what are the approaches to unlock mobility? Ooh, Catherine, I could speak for an hour on this subject. Couple of things. First of all, for a full picture on mobility development, you probably want to get the book Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby by my dad, Douglas Doman, and my grandfather, Glenn Doman. I'll give you the name again. It's Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby. It's available on Amazon. Great book. It talks all about mobility development from birth to 6 years of age and what are all the things you can do to unlock mobility, which is what you're asking. A couple of general things. Children, babies need lots of opportunity on the floor, on their bellies. The floor is the developmental playground for a young child. They need to have opportunities on their belly, on the flat floor, to learn how to crawl on their bellies, creep on their hands and knees, and then get up and start walking. Crawling on the belly and creeping on the hands and knees are essential milestones before walking. And that's important to say because many parents focus so much on walking, they don't realize that the journey to walking, crawling and creeping, are so important. So, Catherine has the book. Great, perfect. Well, then you're halfway there, Catherine. So for that first year of life, we're really looking at trying to give unlimited opportunities for crawling and creeping. Then as we go past, about 1 year of age, along with giving a child lots of opportunity to walk in order to run, there are a lot of other recommendations that are given in the book, like things like passive and active balance development activities, like rolls that can be done with a child, log rolls, forward rolls. Rolls are a very good for way of developing the balance areas of the brain. So I'm just giving you a little tiny taste there, Catherine, but in the book, there's a lot more. There's a program called Brachiation, which is great for manual development and writing, so much in there. So yeah, give the book a read. I do want to say, for children, if anyone out there has a child with delayed mobility development, I just mentioned that, but sometimes parents will ask about mobility development and a child is delayed. I do recommend, my father wrote another book recently called From Immobility to Walking by Douglas Doman. From Immobility to Walking. And that's a book where he really lays out, here are the treatments, here are the therapeutic techniques that you need to use for a child who's delayed in mobility to get them walking. So that's an important thing for me to note. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining this Q&A. I appreciate it. Lots of great questions. And I look forward to coming back in September. As I said, check out the Doman Baby course at domanlearning.com if you want to learn about activities you can do with an infant to help stimulate them and give them the opportunity to have a lifelong love of learning. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.